At 5:17 p.m., a U.S. destroyer wakes the Caribbean before the sun does. USS Gravely rolls to Condition 3, steel humming, cameras hot, guns only showing, not speaking. 3 fast silhouettes fly the Venezuelan flag and press in hard, the formation tight, the wake lines sharp. This is Operation Sentinel South on the edge of international waters, where law enforcement meets the gray zone, and one wrong move can redraw a map. Sensors stitch a single picture: radar pings, FLIR glow, radio breath, while the crew holds the line between presence and provocation. No headlines yet, just choices: lock or track, warn or hush, posture or escalate. The air crew lifts for eyes on, the bridge keeps the course, and the sea turns into a quiet chessboard where every inch and second carry meaning. Was this a probe, a message, or a fuse? Stay with the facts, watch the timing, and read the signals that follow. If you want clean maps, clear breakdowns, and field-tested reporting, subscribe to Military Force and join the fleet. Your support keeps real maritime stories on the surface. Washington raised patrol tempo in the southern Caribbean to break the logistics chain for narcotics, weapons, and illicit migration, and USS Gravely serves as the surface backbone of Operation Sentinel South. The task combines maritime policing with hard deterrence, because cutters alone cannot hold a wide sea lane and a destroyer alone cannot process evidence that survives court. Commanders frame the mission in 2 tracks: interdict what moves tonight, and shape behavior for the next month. That is why the ship's schedule is steady, the routes are predictable, and the paperwork is exact, since credibility at sea starts with clean records. With purpose defined, the question shifts to where and how the ship works the line. The operating box sits just outside Venezuelan waters, roughly 14 nautical miles off prominent points, where lanes from the Orinoco and Gulf of Paria meet traffic around the ABC Islands. Geography favors speedboats that ride short fetch and hide in coastal clutter, yet it also gives radar and helicopter crews open arcs once targets clear the headlands. Legal footing matters as much as navigation, so crews track positions against charts, publish bridge-to-bridge calls, and log every change of course. The line is thin, but it is firm, and that frame sets up the risk calculus for each contact. Interagency structure keeps the patrol honest and effective, since the Navy brings sensors and force protection while the Coast Guard brings detention, evidence, and case law. Air assets lift from deck for wide-area search, while cutters prosecute small stops and transfer crews for custody. Intelligence cells fuse tipper traffic with recent boardings, so patterns emerge: launch coves, refuel points, and handoff zones. The result is not a single chase but a rhythm of coverage, where presence shapes routes and paperwork shapes outcomes. With the network aligned, the ship can shift from general patrol to targeted watch. Strategy treats deterrence as a daily habit, not a speech, so the destroyer shows capability without crossing legal thresholds. Rules of engagement and COLREGS sit side by side on the console, because safe maneuver proves discipline, and discipline prevents misread intent. The message is clear: the United States will police the lane, document the facts, and avoid sparks that invite escalation. That balance is the point, since smugglers test speed while state vessels test nerve, and both read the same signals from range and heading. With mission, map, and mandate in place, the next move depends on what the sensors see. Once the patrol box is set and authorities are clear, the crew shifts to detection logic: find, classify, and confirm, because the first radar return decides the tone of the hour. Gravely treats the first radar hit as the moment that sets the hour. 3 small returns pop in from the southwest, speed rising through 28 to 29 knots, and spacing tightens into a shallow V. Track numbers appear, bearings stabilize, and range ticks down in clean steps. Watchstanders tag flags from prior patterns and note wake lines that suggest planing hulls, not heavy craft. The bridge keeps voice calm while the plot shows steady closure toward the starboard arc. Nothing is declared hostile, but nothing is dismissed. With contacts established, the work shifts from simple detection to disciplined classification. Classification starts with SPY-1D for geometry and timing, then layers electro-optical and electronic support for identity. The combat team pulls EO/IR video for shapes, heat, and deck behavior, while SLQ-32V3 listens for navigation sets or targeting pulses. Sensor techs compare mast outlines and exhaust signatures against cruise book images from earlier runs. The picture sharpens without switching on any fire control illuminator. Aegis fuses everything into a single plot so every console sees the same truth. With picture quality rising, the crew can judge intent from motion rather than guesswork from distance. Condition 3 keeps posture high without inviting misread signals. Helm holds a lawful track line, engineering preserves power margin, and lookouts call splashes, angles, and spray. Cameras roll with timestamps, and the radio guard records all exchanges on the hailing channel. The rule is simple: track, record, and warn, but do not provoke. The destroyer does not hard-lock a weapon radar, does not cue a missile cell, and does not point a laser rangefinder. Presence is shown by readiness, not by threat. With discipline intact, the watch can read intent from how the formation reacts to firm, legal warnings. Behavior reveals more than decals on a stern. Closing at high speed, the trio holds a side approach toward the beam instead of a bow cut, which often signals pressure, not collision. Minor speed changes hint at coordination, and wake angle suggests a common controller rather than 3 independent skippers. The team measures CPA projections and watches for cross-deck turns, loose debris, or sudden throttle bursts. A steady V with small corrections points to a probe rather than a strike. With geometry understood, the ship can decide which tool to add without crossing any red line. The team then builds a layered deterrent that still respects ROE. Radios issue clear, bilingual calls that set safety limits and demand course changes. Deck weapons stay visible but uncued, while optics keep faces, flags, and mastheads in frame for later review. Aircrew prepare a lift to widen the view and close blind spots, because good angles lower risk and raise proof. The effect is quiet but firm. The U.S. ship remains legal, collected, and ready. With picture control achieved and escalation avoided, the next logical move is to put an eye in the sky to lock the story down. The destroyer signals strength without crossing the line, and that choice starts with how the deck looks. The Mk-45 5-inch turns with purpose, the Phalanx CIWS spins up for a systems check, and the VLS stays sealed under its hatches. Crew stand by in helmets and vests, yet no fire control radar paints a target. Readiness is visible, while threat is withheld, and that balance lowers risk while keeping options open. The point is simple. The ship can shoot if forced, but it will not invite a shot. With posture set, the bridge can manage distance and tempo from a firm position. Safety rules guide every move because law at sea protects sailors and cases alike. COLREGS shape the geometry, so the helmsman holds a course that is legal and predictable, and CPA margins are calculated and updated as the tracks evolve. The radio watch calls in English and Spanish, stating the ship's status and demanding safe separation, and every word is recorded with timestamps. Cameras roll across arcs, and engineers log barrel temperatures and system states for later review. Clean files keep a cool head on scene and a strong file in Washington. With the legal frame locked in, Deterrence can do its quiet work. This stance counters gray zone pressure because it narrows the room for misread intent. A gun that is visible but not slewed onto a hull sends a message of control, while a sensor that tracks but does not hard lock keeps the ladder of force short. Harassment tactics try to force a mistake, yet discipline denies that leverage, since steady headings and steady voices leave little to exploit. The crew therefore watches behavior, not paint schemes, and judges intent from closure rates and angles, not from noise on the net. With nerves steady, presence can bend the approach without trading threats. Evidence is part of the weapon set, and it matters before a shot and long after a watch. The ship preserves AIS snapshots if available, saves bridge-to-bridge audio, and tags video frames to the track file so every second can be rebuilt. That archive supports briefings, backs any diplomatic note, and anchors claims if a board or review is opened. Power remains available for hard turns or takes, but paperwork remains first because proof calms allies and warns rivals. With facts secured, the destroyer can escalate only if the other side forces that road. Deterrence also needs depth, so posture on deck pairs with coverage in the air. Visible weapons shape choices near the hull, while elevated eyes cover blind spots and keep each lane honest, which reduces the risk of sudden surprises at low height. The goal is stable space, not dramatic action, since a calm sea favors law and a clean record favors strategy. With presence established and the bridge controlling the CPA, the natural step is to widen the picture from above and lock the geometry from a vantage point that leaves nothing to guess. The MH-60R lifts because altitude gives clarity without forcing contact, and that is the safest way to read intent. The crew launches under eyes on, no weapons hot, so the airframe brings reach without raising the ladder of force. The sensor turret switches to FLIR/MX20, which marks heat, shape, and motion against a cool sea, while the video feed streams back to the ship in real time. Air crew count heads, note flags, and map mast layouts with steady zoom. With the scene framed from above, the team can move from guesswork to proof, which is exactly what the mission needs. Overwatch widens the picture, since radar geometry near the surface leaves gaps that a camera at height can close. The helicopter holds a racetrack pattern offset from the contacts, keeping light, wind, and sea state in mind, because angle decides what the lens can resolve. The crew reads wakes for throttle shifts and watches heat plumes for sudden power changes. Any course swing shows first from the sky, which helps the bridge plan safe CPA and time warnings well. With arcs covered and distance preserved, the patrol stays firm yet calm, and that balance sets up disciplined recording. Evidence is gathered as carefully as fuel is managed, because clean files are a shield in any review. The crew tags each clip with time, bearing, and range, and calls out grid or lat long when able. Still frames capture flags, hull numbers, and crew posture. Audio on the hailing channel is mirrored in the mission recorder, and every change in track is linked to a video moment. The destroyer's network writes hashes and metadata, which protects the chain of custody from camera to server. With the record protected, the narrative cannot be bent by rumor, and that makes later decisions easier to defend. Air and ship fuse their views through Aegis, so the operations plot shows one truth across consoles. SPY-1D maintains timing and range, SLQ-32 listens for emissions, and EO/IR confirms what the eye suspects. The helicopter adds height, which locks identity with angles a deck camera cannot reach. A single fused track prevents double counting and keeps orders aligned, since everyone sees the same speed, vector, and drift. The team can then modulate posture, more warning, tighter course hold, or fresh altitude without mixed signals. With fusion stable, judgment improves, and the chance of a wrong move falls. Safety remains the first constraint, so the helicopter flies within ROE and air rules, while the ship keeps a steady base for recovery. The pilot manages standoff to avoid rotor wash effects on small craft and keeps clear of any potential small arms arc. If weapons are sighted on a deck, the crew shifts line of sight while still recording, which keeps proof without inviting a snap reaction. Fuel checks, crew time, and daylight all factor into the plan, because endurance is part of control. With margins respected, the aircraft can stay on station long enough to shape choices instead of chasing surprises. The value of Overwatch is also political, since clear video changes the tone of any diplomatic exchange. A crisp clip of warnings issued, courses held, and distances maintained answers claims faster than a press release. Southcom analysts need that clarity to judge patterns, launch coves, meeting points, and likely refuel zones, so future patrol boxes can be drawn smarter. The crew therefore treats every minute as both present tense and archive, which is why quality, context, and continuity matter. With material strong enough for court or Congress, the patrol speaks softly yet carries weight. When the contacts ease off, the helicopter documents the turn, the spacing, and the final speed, then calls the bridge with a clean summary. The ship logs the sequence against radar tracks and voice tapes, and the full package is sent up the chain before sunrise. If a protest arrives later, the file answers it with dates, bearings, and images that do not blink. Deterrence grows when facts are visible, because rivals learn that drama will not erase data. With the sky picture secured and the sea lane steady, the operation can move to radio discipline and a measured exit. Radio discipline decides the final shape of the encounter because clear words at the right time prevent sharp turns later. The bridge sends a bilingual call on the hailing channel, stating identity, position outside territorial waters, and the standing request for safe separation. The reply from the Venezuelan side asks for mission details and asserts proximity to national waters, yet the tone stays measured. Every phrase is short, repeatable, and time-stamped, while cameras hold a steady frame on flags, crew posture, and wakes. With facts on tape and warnings delivered, the scene is set for de-escalation done by procedure rather than impulse, and that sets up the choreography of a safe exit. A controlled exit follows a strict ladder, since geometry, not emotion, reduces risk at sea. The destroyer keeps a lawful course and steady speed, while the contacts ease from high 20s to a slower pace and begin an easterly drift. CPA projections widen as the formation opens, and the helicopter records the course change from an offset loop to keep angles clean. Weapons remain uncued, lights and markings stay visible, and the radio watch confirms separation in both English and Spanish. The log ties radar range, camera time, and voice traffic into one chain, which becomes the official memory of the hour. With space restored and posture intact, the focus shifts from seamanship to law and policy. The legal frame matters because it anchors every later claim and it guides action in the moment. UNCLOS draws the boundary, COLREGs shape safe conduct, and published ROE/SRUF define when force is justified. A hostile act is clear, but hostile intent needs behavior, not just proximity, so commanders measure approach angles, throttle changes, and any cue to fire control. The goal is a clean record that can stand in front of lawyers, allies, and committees, since credibility is also deterrence. This careful posture avoids traps that start with glare and end with headlines, and that brings the discussion onto the harder ground of politics and signaling. The political context explains why a near pass can be louder than a shot, because audiences on both shores are watching. In early September 2025, a suspected smuggling craft was sunk during U.S. interdiction activity, and reports counted 11 dead, a fact carried by major outlets such as Reuters, Defense News, and USNI News. Caracas framed the event as an affront, while Washington framed it as maritime law enforcement under pressure. That split creates room for controlled friction, where patrol boats press close, cameras roll, and leaders speak to domestic needs without ordering a clash. Risks still exist. A steering fault, a bad wake, or a misread laser cue can erase margins fast. A technical deconfliction channel, even at the lowest level, would cut those odds without touching politics. With repeat games likely, operators will look for ways to slow the tempo without losing the message. Indicators will reveal whether this settles into routine or climbs the ladder. Look for changes in phrasing on the hailing channel, since new scripts can hint at higher stakes. If escorts appear from additional Venezuelan units, or if cutters receive more tasking, the patrol box is heating up. With messages sent and received, the encounter closes on paper, while the story moves forward to the conclusions that weigh cost, risk, and strategy. Deterrence works best when discipline does the talking, because calm control shapes outcomes while hot metal only narrows choices. Gravely showed that truth by keeping sensors wide, files tidy, and weapons visible yet silent, so the ship held space without lighting a fuse. Gray zone contests punish rash moves, and one bad cue can bend the hour toward a crisis. Therefore, success is measured by distance kept and mission preserved. Watch the signals that matter, since trends reveal intent long before slogans do. Tighter shadow runs inside 12 miles, fresh Navwarn or Notum near the Venezuelan coast, and more dawn or dusk, MH-60R cycles. Listen for changes in radio phrasing, because new scripts often mean new rules, and track official notes from USN/Southcom and Caracas, as these set the frame for the next patrol box. If those indicators rise together, the Southern Caribbean stays a controlled friction zone, where presence rewrites the line between law enforcement and latent force on every pass. If they ease, quiet holds, and the file becomes the message, which is how steady seamanship beats noise. Either way, the lesson stands. Keep proof clean, keep posture firm, and make restraint carry weight. For clear maps, tight breakdowns, and field-tested reporting, subscribe to Military Force and join the fleet today.